Welcome back to our channel World History Explored. Today we will be talking about an Albanian leader who was popularly known for his reserved policies and the creation of a tightly controlled state, Enver Hoxha. Born on the 16th of October 1908 in the quiet town of Gjirokastër, southern Albania. Enver was born into a family of 6. He had 3 sisters. His father, Halil Hoxha, was a popular Muslim cloth merchant who traded all over Europe and the United States. Enver Hoxha was named after Enver Pasha, a former minister of war of the Ottoman Empire. Enver was born into a rich home which could afford education at that time. After finishing elementary school, Hoxha furthered his education at a high school called Liria, and then he left to attend Gjirokastër Lyceum until it closed. He received a scholarship to study in Korçë at the Albanian National Lyceum, where he learned French until 1930. Then, he got another scholarship to study at the University of Montpellier in France for natural science, but he lost it because he didn't focus on his studies. Later, he went to Paris and told Albanian immigrants who were against Zogist, that is King Zog be men of Albania, that he was related to Bari Omari. After working as a secretary at the Albanian consulate in Brussels, Enver Hoxha went back to Albania and became a teacher at the Gymnasium of Tiranas as a contract staff. He taught French and morals at the Korçë Lyceum and also managed the school library during that period. But when fascist Italy invaded Albania in 1939, he was moved to the Gjirokastër Gymnasium. Not long after, Enver returned to Tirana. His friend Esat Dishnica helped him by introducing him to Dishnika's cousin Ibrahim Bisakciu. Enver Hoxha's political career started in 1941 when he was appointed as one of the 7 members of the Provisional Central Committee of a newly founded Communist Party of Albania. A year later, Hoxha wrote, "Call to the Albanian peasantry to enlist support for the war against fascists." The National Liberation Movement was founded in September 1942 to unite anti-fascist Albanians. By March 1943, Hoxha was elected first secretary. During World War II, in March 1943, Hoxha was officially chosen as the first secretary of the Communist Party at their first national conference. The Soviet Union didn't play a big part in Albania during the war. On July 10, 1943, Albanian resistance fighters were organized into units like companies, battalions, and brigades, forming the Albanian National Liberation Army. They received support from the British Intelligence Service, SOE. The leadership included Spiro Moisiu as the commander and Hoxha as the political leader. The Yugoslav partisans played a more practical role, helping plan attacks and sharing supplies. However, communication between them and the Albanians was limited, and letters often arrived late, sometimes after plans were already made by the Albanian fighters. During World War II, Hoxha fought as a guerrilla against Germany from 1943 until Albania was freed in 1944 by the Soviet Red Army. During the Permanent National Congress, people wanted a new Albania that was more democratic and for the people. Although the king was still technically in charge, he wasn't allowed to come back to the country, which gave the communists more control. Hoxha was in charge of a group called the Anti-Fascist Committee for National Liberation. Then, after a meeting in Berat, the committee became the democratic government of Albania, and Hoxha became the temporary prime minister. They set up courts to judge people accused of being war criminals, and those people were seen as enemies of the people. These courts were led by Kosi Shoksi. The new government was openly communist right from the start. In other countries in Eastern Europe controlled by the Soviet Union, communist parties were initially part of groups with different beliefs, but eventually they became one-party states with no other political parties allowed. After Albania was liberated from German hold on November 29, 1944, Albanian partisan groups joined forces with Tito's partisans from Yugoslavia and the Soviet Red Army to push out the remaining German soldiers. Tito later thanked Hoxha for the help Albanian partisans provided during the war. In August 1945, the Democratic Front, controlled by the Albanian Communist Party, took over from the National Liberation Front, and Albania held its first post-war election in December. The Democratic Front was the only legal political group allowed to run in the election, and the government said that 93% of Albanians voted for it. On January 11, 1946, Zog, the former king, was officially removed from power, and Albania became the People's Republic of Albania. Enver Hoxha, who was the first secretary of the Communist Party, became the de facto leader of the country and the most powerful person. After the Second World War, Albania underwent significant changes under the leadership of Enver Hoxha, who was a big fan of the Soviet leader, Joseph Stalin. Hoxha decided to run Albania using the Marxism-Leninism method. Marxism-Leninism was practiced by the Soviet Union, USSR, and its main purpose was to turn a capitalist state into a socialist state. One of the first things Hoxha did was shake up the way land was owned. Before he came into power, a small group of rich people, known as beys and large landowners, owned over half of the land in Albania. Hoxha wasn't going to have any of that, so in 1945, a law that basically confiscated some of the land owned by rich people and given to the poor Albanians was made. In his first 5 years, Hoxha also ensured that the literacy rate of the Albanians improved. Back then, a whole bunch of Albanians couldn't read or write. Hoxha saw this as a big problem, so he made it a priority for Albanians to know how to read and write. By 1950, illiteracy had dropped a whole lot, and by 1985, Albania's literacy rates were on par with Western countries. He also improved the health system. Albania was struggling with diseases like malaria, which was spreading like wildfire. But Hoxha and his government weren't about to let that slide. They invested in healthcare, using things like DDT to kill off disease-carrying mosquitoes and draining swamps where they like to breed. Their efforts paid off big time. From the mid-1960 SS till 1985, Albania was free of malaria, which was a huge deal considering they used to have the most cases in Europe. Enver's first accusation of suppressing human rights was in 1951 after a bomb exploded at the Soviet embassy in the capital city, Tirana. Enver's government detained 23 people they suspected were behind the attack. These weren't just any person. Most of them were people who were known for their ideas and influence in society. One of them was Yunus Kasili, who was killed during the investigation. Enver didn't waste much time on investigations, a fair trial, or any proper legal process. Instead, he ordered that the remaining 22 suspects be put to death. This raised questions, but that was none of Enver's concern. He also pumped a lot of money into building up industries. Before, Albania didn't have much industry, but by the 1980s, it was a big part of the country's economy, making up more than half of all the money Albania made. But Hoxha wasn't exactly cuddly in how he ran things. He used some harsh tactics like Stalin did in the Soviet Union. He locked up, killed, or kicked out anyone who didn't agree with him or challenged his power. He took away people's private property, shut down churches and mosques, and made sure everything in the country was all about socialism and the government. Enver Hoxha's grip on Albania was ironclad, especially when it came to education and religion. He wanted everyone to think like him, so schools were all about teaching Marxist-Leninist ideas and making sure everyone was on the same page. Religion didn't stand a chance under Hoxha's rule. He declared Albania the first atheist state in the world, which meant no room for churches, mosques, or any religious stuff. They either got knocked down or turned into something secular like libraries or community centers. This move really changed how people in Albania lived and thought. But it wasn't just education and religion that Hoxha had a tight grip on. If anyone dared to speak out against him or his government, they were in big trouble. Thousands of people got thrown in jail or even killed for disagreeing with Hoxha. During Hoxha's rule, there were 6 prisons built for just political prisoners and 14 labor camps where political prisoners and common criminals worked together. His secret police, called the Sigurimi, kept a close eye on everyone and used some pretty nasty tactics to keep people scared and in line. He didn't like it when other communist countries tried to boss him around. He ditched Yugoslavia, buddied up with the Soviet Union for a while, then had a falling out with them when the Soviet Union threatened to cut off economic aid to Albania, and every other Warsaw Pact nation broke diplomatic relations with Albania. After that, he got cozy with China until they had a fight as well. Hoxha started having health issues. He suffered a heart attack in 1973, which he never fully recovered. He knew his time was up, and he began delegating more state functions to his heir, Ramiz Alia. In 1974, Enver Hoxha accused Bekir Baluku, the Minister of Defense and a longtime friend, of being a spy for China and plotting to overthrow the government. Before then, Buluku had spoken out against Hoxha's plan to build more bunkers and said he didn't think Albania would be invaded by the US or the Soviet Union. Hoxha didn't take the criticism kindly. He had Buluku and his friends put to death. Then he decided to appoint Mehmet Shehu in charge of the defense ministry. 2 years later, in 1976, Albania got a new set of constitutions. According to him, the old constitution was the constitution of the building of the foundations of socialism, whereas the new constitution will be the constitution of the complete construction of a socialist society. Due to constant issues with other countries, Hoxha was all about Albania standing on its own 2 feet, without relying on anyone else. He wanted everyone to be ready to defend their country, so he encouraged people to learn how to use weapons, even in schools. He made it clear that Albania wasn't going to borrow money from other countries or let them invest in Albanian businesses. He thought that would make Albania too dependent on other countries, and he didn't want that. So he said, no country whatsoever, big or small, can build socialism by taking credits and aid from the bourgeoisie and the revisionists, or by integrating its economy into the world system of capitalist economies. Any such linking of the economy of a socialist country with the economy of bourgeois or revisionist countries opens the doors to the actions of the economic laws of capitalism and the degeneration of the socialist order. This is the road of betrayal and the restoration of capitalism, which the revisionist cliques have pursued and are pursuing. In 1981, Enver decided to execute some of his high-ranking officials as he didn't want them to have power after him, including the Prime Minister at that period, Prime Minister Mehmet Shehu, who had been Hoxha's close ally for up to 4 decades. The exact cause of Shehu's death is still controversial. Some people think he committed suicide, while others doubt he was killed in a power struggle due to conflicts in foreign policy with Hoxha. In April 1985, Hoxha's health became severe, and days later he experienced a dangerous heart condition called ventricular fibrillation and passed away at the age of 76. His death threw Albania into mourning. Several events were canceled in respect to his death. Hoxha's body was displayed for 3 days before his burial. As Hoxha would like it, the Albanian government refused to allow foreign delegations at his funeral and even rejected a message of condolences from the Soviet Union. With Hoxha gone, Ramiz Alia, who was the second in command, took over as head of state and also became the party's leader. Hoxha's legacy left Albania in a state of isolation and suspicion of the outside world. Despite some economic progress and some good policies like increasing the literacy rate of Albanians during his rule, the country remained economically stagnant and was considered one of the poorest in Europe during the Cold War period, and even today. Throughout his life, Enver received some awards and decorations for his bravery and heroism. He received Bulgaria's Order for Bravery First Class Award in September 1944. This award was given to individuals who showed exceptional courage and bravery in Bulgaria, especially during times of war or conflict. He also received the Order of the People's Hero in Yugoslavia in 1946. Back then, this was a super prestigious award given to people who did extraordinary things for Yugoslavia. Another prestigious award Enver received was the Order of Suvorov, first class in the Soviet Union in 1948. This particular award was named after a famous Russian military commander, Alexander Suvorov, and it was given to top-notch military leaders or soldiers who showed exceptional skill, bravery, and leadership on the battlefield. In recognition of his extraordinary service to the Soviet Union, Enver was awarded the Order of Lenin in the Soviet Union. This was one of the highest honors anyone could get in the Soviet Union. It was named after Vladimir Lenin, the leader of the Russian Revolution. The Order of Lenin was given to people who made significant contributions to the Soviet Union, whether it was in politics, science, culture, or anything else that helped the country. If you loved Hoxha's story, we encourage you to further explore more about the life and times of this individual. History doesn't have an end. We hope this video has shown you what the Hoxha rule looked like. If you did enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.